Pato, you've written an article in the Sydney Morning Herald in the paper today, Wednesday the 11th of June, that the structure as it is this year is going to be reviewed. What are they going to look at, do you think?
It's going to come under a general review of the competition, but yeah, I suppose to put context to it all, after the Chiefs lost their qualifying final to the Blues, as part of the new Super Rugby final structure, they retained the right to host a semi-final, obviously, so the Brumbies have got to travel over to Hamilton on Saturday, and I think it caught a few people by surprise. The rules were there, as has been spoken about in other places, but I think most people thought that the Chiefs would lose the right to host another final. A bit of a double dipping situation. So I think it caught a few people by surprise on Saturday night when you guys were putting up the where the finals will be next week.
And they're still hosting, yeah.
Spoke to Jack Mesley, the Super Rugby CEO, yesterday. He's saying, look, they do a review of the competition anyway. They will go around to the stakeholders. I don't like that word, but the clubs, the players, the officials, and he also, I think wisely sort of said that there'll be an element of the pub test as well, whether the punters think this is a fair system. And he acknowledged that plenty of people don't think it's a fair system. So I think that's good that Super Rugby have got an open mind about it. I wouldn't be surprised to see that if this time next year there's a tinkering. As we've discussed on this show in the past, Super Rugby's been a victim of too much change in the past, always constantly changing. But I don't think that should stop you tinkering with things if things just don't quite feel right.
I think those changes though have probably come in because the number of teams have changed a lot over the last 10 years.
But that in this example changes the number of teams you got in finals, but that doesn't mean you have to go with this structure. They could have found a better way to structure the finals this year out.
But I also think I like the top six because the last two rounds there was still probably 9 teams that could have made that top six. So I don't mind. I love the top six. I think just they need to tinker with it. I was listening to James Horwell on Between Two Posts earlier this week talking about, and this is probably the best way to go, 1 and 2. You've got to have some sort of incentive to finish 1 and 2 in the competition. 1 and 2 should get the weekend off, and then from 3 to 6 they end up playing. So 3 plays 6, 4 plays 5, knockout finals. Then they go and play the semi-finals against 1 and 2. But I'm fine with the Chiefs getting a second chance at home.
I think you've got to look at some of the things around why that system was put in place or how it was put in place. There was probably not as thorough a stakeholder engagement and consultation process as what's going to be involved now. The Rebels were exited very quickly. The team went almost overnight, although we knew it was a slow burn, to an 11-team competition, and there had to be some form of building content, allowing teams to have home games in an 11-team competition. You've got 2 buys now, so that means every team loses another game, another revenue piece as well. Trying to solve for that was very difficult. So we had the 8-team final. People didn't like that.
No.
Added value by changing it to 6. Exactly right, Pato. I think they'll add value because it'll be a known entity that's accepted by many stakeholders to just change slightly how the reshuffle happens. Don't agree with the top 2 having a week off, maybe, because two less games for people, 2 less venues that are going to be played for content, for the broadcast, Sky and Stan to put on TV and generate revenue, eyeballs.
But also momentum going into finals. If you finish 1 and 2, you actually, as a player, you feel like you want to keep playing.
Every game on the last weekend before the finals meant something, and every game 1 through 6 meant something as well, clearly. I think what we're caught by surprise was the lack of knowledge around the Chiefs and coming out and saying this is the finals and this is what's happening.
But also for the viewer, it was quite confusing for the viewer or the fan to know all the permutations on if your side wins or loses, highest loser, highest winner, how that works. So I think that they
not knowing and then understanding why. And then how do we consult and improve? Would be very surprised if next year, if 1 or 2 lose a home final, if we maintain the same structure, then they lose the right to host a semi at the next opportunity, and then
no one really bothered reading the fine print, because how often does the lowest team beat the top team?
That's right.
not often. In fact, it's only ever happened twice in Super Rugby.
Unless you picked the Blues to win against the Chiefs.
Tim, I don't know if you were in these teams, you may have been, but Queensland were the only teams to have lost. It was back when Super Rugby was a top 4, so they went straight to semis, and Queensland lost in the Tail Sharks in 96.
We played them in the last round in Durban, and then they end up finishing 4th. We finished first. I think we lost 1 or 2 games the whole season.
And then Crusaders when they won from 4th. So no one bothered reading the fine print, right? So it kind of caught us by surprise.
Well, you're right. And there is a mastermind algorithm that has 6 beating first. Wow, no one saw that happening. But then also a scenario that's on the other end of the bell curve that has, if you reshuffle incorrectly those rankings, potentially you can have a semi and then the same opponents meeting again in a quarter into a semi. So that there was a bit of jeopardy there as well.
So it was done to reward the minor premier, obviously. It was supposed to be a reward for the minor premier.
But isn't the reward for minor premiership is you're guaranteed to go through to the next week? That's enough of a reward. If you lose,
to the major semi.
If you lose, you forfeit any right to host from there on. The Chiefs could still host the final despite losing the first week.
Well, and I argue in Super Rugby, I wrote a piece about this the other day, that the ability to have the inside running to host the final, which the only person that gets the inside running to host the final is the team that finishes 1. If you keep winning, you host the final. And 19 of the 26 Super Rugby winners were the team that finished first. So playing at home is such an advantage in a competition with international travel.
And that's why it was so costly for the Brumbies to lose that game a couple of weeks ago, to not finish number 2.
That's your advantage to me, that for finishing first, finishing minor premier, is having inside running on playing the final at home. So, Tim, I don't think that we'll go back to that system of having the top 2 get a week off, because there's a competition that, as you mentioned, with the Rebels, there's already lost games. So the broadcasters are pretty keen to get as many games.
You only lose 1 finals match if you go to that. Like in that opening week, instead of having 3 games, you have 2. So you only lose 1.
You're still down an extra game because there's 2 buys in the competition, so there's 2.
Would integrity of competition not be more important than quantity of content? And quantity of content.
1 more game. But you've got to be careful.
You're losing 1 finals game in that system.
It needs to be a sustainable platform of commercial viability, and this will be the difference as well in stakeholder engagement. Super Rugby clubs need to be at the table, along with players as well, about Super Rugby. They need to present how the commercial outcomes of this year has worked for them. What has it meant for 2 missing games because of 2 buys? What has it meant for a home final series and you getting another semi? I mean, the Chiefs would be pretty happy they get another game at home from a revenue perspective. Are they the only team? Do other teams accept that as well? I think that'll be the difference in this. Mesley and the Super Rugby Pacific concept and central office wasn't around when this was put together. It'll be a vastly different outcome.
There's pros and cons to all the ways you look at it. So the Crusaders and the Chiefs are playing 2 home games in a row. Like, do people put their hands in their pocket for that? But additionally, as Jack Mesley said to me yesterday, imagine the Brumbies bashed up after a really tough game against the Canes. We're now going to the Chiefs who'd had a week off when we're fresh. So jeopardy is what's got us to this position, which is great. So, you know, the second result, the second final this weekend means that, you know, Chiefs and Brumbies have both got bruises all over them. I think probably the most common sense solution is just, if you lose a final, you automatically go to 4th seeding, regardless of who you are.
Just got to be careful it doesn't become a Duckworth-Lewis scenario with the cricket where no one knew what was going on. So keep it simple so that the fans can understand.
Maybe we should give it a name, Duckworth-Lewis. Even then, you're like, okay, that explains it.
What about Horan, Harrison, Payten? No. The HHP.
Do not call it that.
Just
but I think
we're blamed for enough things.
We'll call it the Horan.
I think all people, if the Chiefs, when the Chiefs lost, they should then go to Canberra to play the Brumbies.
Yeah, that's what I think most people thought was going to happen, right?